Imagine sitting across from your husband in divorce mediation, watching him act heartbroken about your marriage ending, while the attorney he hired to represent him is the woman he's been sleeping with for the past year. This is the true story of how Rebecca Walsh walked into what was supposed to be a peaceful mediation session and turned it into the most explosive confrontation her lawyer had ever witnessed. What she revealed didn't just end her marriage, it destroyed two careers and exposed a scheme that had been designed to leave her with nothing. Rebecca Walsh knew something was wrong the moment her husband hired Vanessa Chen as his divorce attorney. Not because Vanessa had a bad reputation, actually the opposite. Vanessa Chen was known as one of the most aggressive divorce lawyers in Seattle, someone who fought ruthlessly for her clients and didn't care who got hurt in the process. That was exactly the problem. Rebecca and her husband Kyle had agreed to an amicable divorce. They'd been married for 12 years, had no children, and both had successful careers. Rebecca was a physical therapist who owned her own practice. Kyle was a commercial pilot. They'd grown apart over the years, wanted different things, and decided to separate as friends. At least that's what Kyle had told Rebecca when he'd asked for the divorce 6 months ago. "We can do this civilly," Kyle had said, sitting across from Rebecca at their kitchen table in the house they'd bought together 8 years ago. "No drama, no fighting over everything. We split things fairly and move on with our lives." Rebecca had been sad but not devastated. The marriage had been dying slowly for years. They barely talked anymore, had stopped having sex, lived like roommates rather than spouses. The divorce felt inevitable. "I agree," Rebecca had said. "Let's make this as painless as possible." They'd shaken hands like business partners ending a contract. So when Kyle hired Vanessa Chen 3 months later, Rebecca was confused. Vanessa Chen didn't do amicable divorces. She did warfare. Rebecca mentioned it to her own attorney, Martin Rodriguez, during one of their meetings. Martin was the opposite of Vanessa. Calm, reasonable, someone who preferred negotiation over confrontation. "Why would Kyle hire someone like Vanessa Chen if we're trying to keep this friendly?" Rebecca asked. Martin frowned. "That is odd. Vanessa's expensive too. She charges $500 an hour. Most people don't hire her unless they're expecting a fight." "But we're not fighting," Rebecca said. "We've already agreed on most things. We're splitting the house proceeds, dividing our savings, keeping our own retirement accounts. It's straightforward." "Maybe Kyle's just being cautious," Martin suggested. "Some people get nervous during divorce and want aggressive representation even when it's not necessary." But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That feeling got stronger when Vanessa started delaying everything. Meetings got rescheduled. Documents that should have taken days to review took weeks. Simple decisions became complicated negotiations. "Vanessa's requesting a full forensic audit of your physical therapy practice," Martin told Rebecca during a phone call in November. "She claims Kyle is entitled to a portion of the business value since you built it during the marriage." "What? We already agreed I keep the practice and he keeps his pilot's pension," Rebecca said. "That was the deal." "I know," Martin said, sounding frustrated, "but Vanessa's arguing that the practice has grown significantly and Kyle deserves compensation. She's also questioning the value of your retirement accounts, saying you might be hiding assets." Rebecca was furious. "I'm not hiding anything. Kyle knows exactly what we have. We've been transparent about everything." "I'll push back," Martin said. "But Rebecca, I have to warn you. Vanessa Chen doesn't play fair. She's going to drag this out and make things difficult. That's her strategy." Over the next 2 months, the amicable divorce became a nightmare. Vanessa filed motion after motion, each one requiring Rebecca to provide more documentation, more proof, more evidence of her finances. She demanded access to Rebecca's business records going back 5 years. She questioned every asset Rebecca owned, suggesting they'd been hidden or undervalued. Kyle, who'd once promised to keep things civil, went along with everything Vanessa suggested. When Rebecca tried to talk to him directly, he refused to speak to her. "All communication needs to go through my attorney," he'd said coldly. By January, Rebecca was exhausted and confused. The divorce that should have been finalized months ago was now scheduled for mediation in February. Martin explained that a mediator would help them negotiate the remaining issues, primarily the value of Rebecca's business and how to divide it. "Mediation usually works," Martin assured her. Even Vanessa Chen has to be reasonable in front of a mediator. We'll get this resolved. Rebecca wasn't so sure. The week before mediation, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Kyle's behavior, about how dramatically things had changed after he'd hired Vanessa. The man who'd wanted a friendly divorce had become someone she didn't recognize. Cold, aggressive, unreasonable. On a Tuesday night, Rebecca did something she hadn't done in months. She drove past Kyle's new apartment, a high-rise downtown that he'd moved into after they'd separated. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she just wanted to feel connected to the life they'd had. Or maybe she was looking for answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. Kyle's car was in the parking garage. Rebecca sat in her own car across the street, feeling pathetic for stalking her soon-to-be ex-husband. She was about to leave when she saw something that made her heart stop. Vanessa Chen walked out of Kyle's building. It was 9 o'clock at night. Vanessa was wearing jeans and a casual sweater, carrying a purse, looking relaxed. She got into her BMW and drove away. Rebecca sat frozen in her car. Why was Vanessa Chen leaving Kyle's apartment at 9 p.m. dressed casually? Lawyers didn't make house calls at night in street clothes, unless they weren't there as lawyers. Rebecca's mind raced. She thought about how aggressive Vanessa had been, how she'd turned a simple divorce into a complicated battle. She thought about Kyle's sudden change in behavior, his refusal to communicate directly with Rebecca. She pulled out her phone and called her brother Danny, who was a private investigator. "I need your help," Rebecca said when he answered. "I think Kyle's sleeping with his divorce attorney." Danny was quiet for a moment. That would be seriously unethical. Like lose your license unethical. "I know," Rebecca said, "but I just saw her leaving his apartment at 9 at night dressed in casual clothes. That's not a business meeting." "Okay," Danny said. "Let me look into it. Give me a week." Danny worked fast. He followed Vanessa and Kyle, documented their meetings, tracked their movements. What he found confirmed Rebecca's suspicions and revealed something even worse. A week later, Danny met Rebecca at a coffee shop and slid a folder across the table. "They've been having an affair for at least 9 months, Danny said quietly. "Started around the time Kyle asked you for the divorce." Rebecca opened the folder. There were photos of Kyle and Vanessa together, having dinner at restaurants, walking hand in hand through a park, entering her apartment building together and not leaving until the next morning. "There's more," Danny said. "I did some digging into Vanessa's other cases. She has a pattern. She targets men going through divorces, starts affairs with them, then represents them aggressively to maximize what they get from the settlement. She takes a percentage above her normal fee if she wins big." Rebecca felt sick. So this whole thing, the delays, the aggressive tactics, trying to devalue my business, it's all been a scheme? "Looks like it," Danny said. "Kyle's been working with Vanessa to hide assets and minimize what you get. I found evidence that Kyle transferred $50,000 from your joint savings account to a new account in just his name 3 weeks before he asked for the divorce. He also took out a loan against his pension that he hasn't disclosed." Rebecca stared at the documents Danny had uncovered. "He's been planning this. All of it. The friendly divorce was just a lie to make me complacent." "I'm sorry," Danny said. "But yeah, that's what it looks like." Rebecca spent the next 2 days in a fog of rage and betrayal. Kyle hadn't just cheated on her. He'd orchestrated an entire scheme with his attorney to steal from her. And Vanessa Chen, who was supposed to have professional ethics, had helped him do it. Rebecca called Martin Rodriguez and told him everything. She showed him Danny's evidence. The photos, the financial documents, the proof of Vanessa and Kyle's affair. Martin was silent for a long time after reviewing everything. Then he said, "This is bad. Really bad. What Vanessa's doing is grounds for disbarment. Sleeping with a client while representing them in a divorce. That's one of the most serious ethical violations an attorney can commit." "What do we do?" Rebecca asked. Martin thought for a moment. "Mediation is scheduled for next Tuesday. We could file a complaint with the Bar Association now, get Vanessa removed from the case, and Kyle would have to get a new attorney." "No," Rebecca said. "I want to confront them, both of them. I want them to know that I know, and I want witnesses." Martin raised his eyebrows. "You want to expose them at mediation?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "I want the mediator to see what they've been doing. I want it on the record. Then we file the bar complaint." Martin smiled slowly. That's risky, but it would definitely make an impact. Set it up, Rebecca said. I'm done being the naive wife who doesn't know what's happening. The next 5 days felt like the longest of Rebecca's life. She went to work, treated her patients, managed her physical therapy practice, all while knowing what was coming. She didn't contact Kyle, didn't give any indication that she knew about his affair or his scheme. She wanted him and Vanessa to walk into that mediation room completely unprepared for what was about to hit them. Martin helped her prepare. They organized all the evidence. Danny's photos, the financial documents showing Kyle's hidden assets, phone records showing hundreds of calls between Kyle and Vanessa at all hours, text messages Danny had managed to obtain through methods Rebecca didn't ask about. The mediator is going to be shocked, Martin said. This isn't what mediation is supposed to be used for. But once we present this evidence, the mediation will end and we'll move forward with litigation. Kyle will be in a much weaker position and Vanessa will be facing serious professional consequences. Good, Rebecca said. They deserve it. The mediation was scheduled for Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on Rebecca. She dressed carefully that morning, a navy blue suit, professional and powerful. She did her makeup, pulled her hair back in a neat bun. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 6 months ago, she'd been sad about her failing marriage. Now she was furious about the betrayal and ready for war. Martin picked her up at 9. The mediation was scheduled for 10 at a neutral office building downtown, in a conference room rented specifically for these sessions. Are you ready? Martin asked as they drove. Completely, Rebecca said. They arrived at 9:45. The mediator, a woman named Susan Park, who'd been doing divorce mediation for 20 years, greeted them in the lobby. She was in her 60s, professional and calm, someone who'd probably seen every kind of divorce drama imaginable. Good morning, Susan said, shaking their hands. We're just waiting for Mr. Walsh and his attorney. They should be here any moment. Rebecca's heart was pounding, but she kept her expression neutral. She and Martin followed Susan into the conference room, a bland space with a long table, gray walls, and a whiteboard. There were bottles of water, notepads, and pens laid out. At exactly 10 o'clock, Kyle and Vanessa arrived. Kyle looked good. He'd lost weight, was wearing an expensive suit Rebecca had never seen before. He barely glanced at Rebecca as he entered, taking a seat across the table from her. Vanessa Chen was stunning, Rebecca had to admit. Late 30s, perfectly styled black hair, designer suit, confident posture. She set her leather briefcase on the table and smiled at Susan. Good morning. Thank you for facilitating this mediation. We're hoping to resolve some outstanding issues today. Susan nodded. That's the goal. Let's start with... Actually, Rebecca interrupted, her voice steady. Before we start the mediation, there's something everyone needs to know. Kyle frowned. Vanessa's smile faded slightly. Martin sat quietly beside Rebecca, his expression neutral. Susan looked surprised. Ms. Walsh, typically we start with... This can't wait, Rebecca said. She pulled out her phone and connected it to the TV screen Martin had arranged to have set up in the room. Everyone needs to see this before we proceed. The screen lit up with photos. Kyle and Vanessa having dinner together. Kyle and Vanessa holding hands in a park. Kyle and Vanessa entering Vanessa's apartment building together. Timestamps showing late evening, with more photos showing Kyle leaving the next morning. Kyle's face went white. Vanessa stood up abruptly. What is this? Where did you get these? Sit down, Ms. Chen, Rebecca said coldly. Everyone here is going to see exactly what you've been doing. Susan was staring at the screen, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. Are you saying that Mr. Walsh and his attorney are involved romantically? They've been having an affair for 9 months, Rebecca said, since before Kyle even asked me for a divorce. More photos appeared on the screen, dozens of them, showing Kyle and Vanessa together over months. Intimate moments, casual moments, moments that made it absolutely clear they were in a relationship. Kyle tried to speak. Rebecca, this isn't... We can explain. Don't, Rebecca said, cutting him off. I'm not done. She pulled up financial documents. While having an affair with my husband, Vanessa Chen has been representing him in our divorce. She's deliberately delayed proceedings, made aggressive demands, and tried to devalue my business, all while sleeping with her client. Vanessa's face was flushed with anger. This is completely inappropriate. You can't just... I can, Rebecca said, because what you're doing is illegal. An attorney having a sexual relationship with a client during active representation? That's an ethics violation. You could be disbarred. Susan was looking at Vanessa with an expression of disbelief. Is this true, Ms. Chen? Vanessa didn't answer. She was staring at the screen, at the undeniable evidence of her relationship with Kyle. There's more, Rebecca continued. She displayed the financial documents Danny had uncovered. 3 weeks before asking me for a divorce, Kyle transferred $50,000 from our joint savings account into a new account in only his name. Money that should have been divided equally in the divorce. He also took out a loan against his pilot's pension, $80,000, that he never disclosed during our financial discovery. Kyle was shaking his head. That's not... I was going to tell you about... You were stealing from me, Rebecca said, her voice hard. And Vanessa knew about it. She helped you hide assets so you could get more from the settlement. She turned our supposedly amicable divorce into a battle specifically to distract from the money you were hiding. Before this gets even more intense, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how this ends. Martin pulled out more documents and slid them across the table to Susan. We have phone records showing over 300 calls between Mr. Walsh and Ms. Chen outside of business hours. We have credit card receipts showing Mr. Walsh paying for expensive dinners and hotel rooms. We have text messages discussing their relationship and their strategy for the divorce. Susan was reviewing the documents, her expression growing darker. She looked at Vanessa. Ms. Chen, these are extremely serious allegations. Do you have a response? Vanessa had composed herself slightly. This is clearly a setup designed to discredit me and sabotage my client's case. The photos could be manipulated. The documents could be falsified. They're not falsified, Rebecca said, and you know it. You've been sleeping with my husband for 9 months. You've been helping him steal from me. And you violated every ethical rule an attorney is supposed to follow. She turned to Susan. I'm filing a complaint with the Washington State Bar Association today. I'm also filing a civil suit against both Kyle and Vanessa for fraud and conspiracy to commit theft. Kyle found his voice, and it came out desperate. Rebecca, please. We can work this out. We don't need to. Work this out? Rebecca's voice rose for the first time. You asked me for a divorce claiming you wanted to stay friends. You said we'd keep things civil and fair. And the whole time, you were planning to screw me over with your attorney girlfriend. I do care about you, Kyle said weakly. The affair just happened. It wasn't planned. Bullshit, Rebecca said. You transferred money 3 weeks before asking for a divorce. You hid assets. You hired the most aggressive attorney in Seattle and started sleeping with her. This was all planned, Kyle. You're just angry you got caught. Vanessa tried one more time. Ms. Walsh, these accusations are defamatory. I've done nothing but provide zealous representation for my client. You slept with your client, Rebecca said. During active divorce proceedings, you can deny it all you want, but I have hundreds of photos, phone records, witnesses who've seen you together. The Bar Association is going to have all of it. Susan held up her hand. This mediation is over. I cannot continue under these circumstances. She looked at Vanessa. Ms. Chen, I'll be filing my own report with the Bar Association about what I've witnessed here today. What you've allegedly done is one of the most serious violations of legal ethics I've encountered in 20 years of mediation. Vanessa grabbed her briefcase. I don't have to listen to this. She looked at Kyle. Don't say anything else. We're leaving. But Kyle didn't move. He was staring at Rebecca with an expression that might have been regret or might have been fear of the consequences coming his way. You destroyed our marriage for money, Rebecca said quietly. That's all this was about. You didn't fall out of love with me. You just decided you'd rather have all our assets than share them. That's not true, Kyle said, but his voice had no conviction. Rebecca stood up. Martin, let's go. We're filing everything today. As she walked toward the door, Vanessa stepped in front of her. You're going to regret this. I'm an excellent attorney. I'll fight you on everything. With what license? Rebecca asked. By the time I'm done, you won't be practicing law in this state. She walked past Vanessa and out of the conference room. Martin followed, carrying his briefcase full of evidence. In the hallway, Rebecca finally allowed herself to feel the emotions she'd been holding back. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing, but she'd done it. She'd confronted them, exposed them, made sure the truth came out in front of a witness who could corroborate everything. "That was incredible," Martin said, pressing the elevator button. "I've never seen anything like that in my entire career." "Did we get everything we needed?" Rebecca asked. "More than enough," Martin confirmed. "Susan's testimony alone will be damaging, and with all the evidence we have, both Kyle and Vanessa are going to face serious consequences." The elevator arrived and they stepped in. As the doors closed, Rebecca caught one last glimpse of the conference room. Kyle was sitting with his head in his hands. Vanessa was on her phone, probably already calling her own attorney. Their scheme had fallen apart in less than 30 minutes. The next few weeks were chaos. Rebecca filed her complaint with the Washington State Bar Association, providing every piece of evidence Danny had gathered. The Bar Association launched an immediate investigation into Vanessa Chen. Within days, the story leaked to the legal community. Attorneys talked, word spread, and soon everyone in Seattle's family law circles knew that Vanessa Chen had been sleeping with a client during active divorce proceedings. 3 of Vanessa's other clients filed complaints, claiming she'd behaved inappropriately with them as well. The investigation expanded, revealing a pattern of Vanessa targeting vulnerable men going through divorces, starting relationships with them, and then representing them aggressively while taking cuts of their settlement money. Vanessa was suspended from practicing law within a month, pending the outcome of the full investigation. Her law firm fired her immediately to protect their own reputation. Kyle faced consequences too. Rebecca's attorney filed an emergency motion to freeze all of Kyle's accounts and force full financial disclosure. A judge, outraged by the evidence of hidden assets and financial manipulation, ruled in Rebecca's favor. The $50,000 Kyle had hidden was returned to the joint account. The $80,000 pension loan was disclosed and factored into the asset division. Kyle was also ordered to pay Rebecca's legal fees, all of them, including the cost of hiring Danny to investigate. The divorce that Kyle had hoped would leave him wealthy instead left him broke and humiliated. His airline found out about the situation. One of his colleagues had been at a legal conference where the story came up, and Kyle was placed under review for behavior unbecoming of a pilot. Rebecca's physical therapy practice wasn't touched. The forensic audit Vanessa had demanded was canceled. Rebecca kept her business, her retirement accounts, and got 65% of the joint assets instead of the 50% originally agreed upon. The judge explained his reasoning clearly. Mr. Walsh attempted to defraud his wife with the help of an attorney who violated her professional ethics. This court will not reward such behavior. Rebecca's brother Danny was thrilled with how everything turned out. "You absolutely destroyed them," he said over dinner one night. "Kyle's broke, Vanessa's probably going to be disbarred, and you got everything you deserved." "I just wanted the truth to come out," Rebecca said. "I was willing to give Kyle a fair divorce. He's the one who decided to turn it into a war. And he lost spectacularly," Danny said, raising his glass. "To honesty winning." Rebecca clinked her glass against his, feeling lighter than she had in months. 4 months after the mediation, Vanessa Chen's disbarment hearing took place. Rebecca was called to testify, along with Susan Park, the mediator, and several of Vanessa's former clients. The evidence was overwhelming. Vanessa had violated nearly every rule in the professional code of conduct. She'd had inappropriate relationships with multiple clients. She'd conspired to hide assets. She'd charged excessive fees based on settlement outcomes rather than hourly rates. The disciplinary board took less than an hour to reach their decision. Vanessa Chen was permanently disbarred from practicing law in Washington state. She was also ordered to pay fines totaling $200,000 and faced potential criminal charges for fraud. Vanessa didn't attend the hearing. Her own attorney said she'd moved to California, though whether she'd try to practice law there with a disbarment on her record was questionable. Kyle reached out to Rebecca once after the disbarment hearing, sending a long email apologizing for everything. He claimed he'd been manipulated by Vanessa, that he hadn't understood how serious the ethical violations were, that he'd never meant to hurt Rebecca. Rebecca read the email once and deleted it. She didn't respond. There was nothing Kyle could say that would change what he'd done or repair the trust he'd destroyed. 6 months after the explosive mediation session, Rebecca's divorce was finally finalized. She got exactly what she deserved, fair division of assets plus compensation for Kyle's attempted fraud. She kept her business, her independence, and her dignity. She also got something unexpected, a sense of power. For months, she'd been the victim of Kyle and Vanessa's scheme. But by exposing them, by refusing to let them get away with their betrayal, Rebecca had taken control of her own story. She started speaking at legal conferences about ethics violations in family law. Bar associations invited her to share her experience, to help other attorneys understand the serious consequences of inappropriate relationships with clients. Rebecca also wrote an article for a legal journal titled, "When Your Divorce Attorney is Sleeping with Your Spouse," a case study in professional ethics violations. The article went viral in legal circles and was used in several law school ethics courses as an example of what not to do. 1 year after the mediation, Rebecca stood in her newly renovated home office. She'd bought out Kyle's share of the house and made it completely her own. Her physical therapy practice was thriving. She'd hired 2 new therapists and was considering opening a second location. Her phone rang. It was Martin Rodriguez, her attorney who'd become a friend through the ordeal. "I thought you'd want to know," Martin said. "Kyle filed for bankruptcy. He can't pay back all the fees and fines from the divorce. He also lost his pilot's license, some issue with the ethics review at his airline." Rebecca felt a moment of sympathy, then it passed. Kyle had made his choices. He'd gambled that he could cheat the system with Vanessa's help, and he'd lost everything. "Thanks for letting me know," Rebecca said. "How are you doing?" Martin asked. "Really?" Rebecca looked around her. Home office, at the business she'd built, at the life she'd reconstructed. "I'm good," she said. "Really good." And she was. The betrayal had been devastating, but surviving it and fighting back had made Rebecca stronger than she'd ever been. She'd learned she could trust her instincts, fight for herself, and refuse to be a victim. The mediation room revelation had been one moment, one explosive confrontation, but everything after was Rebecca living honestly, successfully, and completely on her own terms. She'd made sure justice was served. Kyle and Vanessa had both lost their careers, their reputations, and their futures. And Rebecca, she gained her freedom, her power, and proof that the truth always matters more than protecting people who don't deserve protection. 2 years later, Rebecca was at a legal ethics conference where she'd been invited to speak. After her presentation about her experience, a young female attorney approached her. "Thank you for sharing your story," the woman said. "I'm going through something similar. I think my husband's attorney is behaving inappropriately. Your talk gave me the courage to investigate." Rebecca gave the woman her contact information. "Don't let them get away with it," she said. "You deserve honesty and fair treatment. If they're violating ethics rules, expose them. The system only works if people are willing to hold bad actors accountable." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "I will. Thank you." Watching her walk away, Rebecca felt a sense of purpose. Her nightmare experience had become something meaningful, a way to help other people, to change the system, to make sure attorneys like Vanessa Chen face consequences for their actions. The mediation room where everything had exploded was just a conference room in an office building. But what had happened there had changed lives, ended careers, and served as a reminder that betrayal, no matter how carefully planned, eventually comes to light. Rebecca had made sure of that, and she'd never regretted it for a single moment.